Is atheism deadly? Frank Turek seems to think so, but, he's an idiot, so I'm not sure how much that really matters. But this comes up a lot in apologetic circles, almost like someone is feeding these clueless preachers a line of bunk that they can just pass along to their ignorant followers. So strap in, ladies and gents. Here we go again. I will admit that I'm getting kind of sick and tired of Frank Turek, but sometimes you find such a diamond buried in the turds that drop from his lips that you just have to go and take a look. This guy is full of crap, and there's no chance that anyone here isn't aware of that by now, because otherwise they must be willfully ignorant and purposely stupid, and I don't think my audience is like that. There is no other explanation that I can come up with for the garbage that we see from Frank Turek. No one should believe a single word that comes out of his mouth. Not one. So let's go debunk yet another one of his really, really stupid ideas.
World War I caused by religion? No. World War II caused by religion? No. Korean War caused by religion? No. Vietnam War caused by religion? No.
So, what difference does that make? Well, other than World War II, which was largely influenced by Hitler's Christianity, even though you people don't seem to like that fact. But we can set that aside for the moment and accept that religion didn't cause any of those wars. And you know what else had absolutely nothing to do with any of those wars? Atheism. Not a damn thing. But Frank here, he's an idiot with an agenda. As far as he's concerned, if it was something bad and Christianity isn't to blame, well, it's gotta be atheism's fault. He ignores the fact that it is literally impossible for anything to be done in the name of atheism, because there's nothing whatsoever to atheism. Why can't Frank get that through his tiny little addled brain?
I've noticed in my studies of history that every single civilization that pops up, no matter where or how isolated, has a religion.
Not necessarily. Now, if you're only talking about antiquity, then yeah, you're probably right, because religion was the de facto method for controlling an ignorant population and providing answers to questions that they simply had no intellectual means at the moment to answer. When you're looking at dumb people, religion is there. It's the comforting lie that covers up ignorance of the truth. It's why dumb people today still believe it. You people. However, if you look at the countries scoring highest in societal health today, you know what we see near universally? A relative absence of religion. As societies improve, as people get smarter, religious adherence tends to fall. And that's why we see so many churches focusing on the third world. It's the only place they can find people ignorant and uneducated enough to believe in their stupidity. I'm really not that concerned with what happened 1,000 years ago, except insofar as we learn from them so that we don't make the same mistakes again. Like the Dark Ages and all of their religious wars. The only thing that history is really teaching us is that religion is bad.
I don't know if there's any exception, but that seems to be the rule for me. I was wondering where atheism ever comes into play, historically.
Historically, well, all over the place. And you know what happens when it does? This won't be a surprise to anyone here, but I'm sure Frank will never bring it up. But when atheism pokes up his head in history, it tends to get whacked by the religious. Religious people tend to try to kill atheists. And that still happens to this day, of course, but there are tons and tons of examples of religious assholes murdering atheists in cold blood because we make them feel bad about the silly things that they believe. In the late 5th century BCE, the Greek poet Diagoras of Melos was sentenced to death for being a godless person. He had to flee the city to save his own life. Following the Peloponnesian War, Greece issued the Decree of Diopathes, which outlawed non-belief in the Greek gods. Anaxagoras was the first person to be exiled under that new law. There are many, many, many cases that we can point to throughout history where the religious are persecuting the non-religious and making them very, very, very dead. And that still happens to this day. I mean, go look at Bangladesh, which has a propensity for Muslims to whack off the heads of atheists with machetes, and everyone just looks the other way because, the religious don't care. Now, go find a non-religious majority nation in the modern world where that happens to the religious on a regular basis. Go ahead. Just one. You can't find one because it just doesn't happen.
If there's any societies that have had higher rates of atheism, or, maybe you have answers as to where it originated.
Yeah, those aren't questions to ask Frank, because Frank hasn't got a clue what the hell he's talking about. Stand by! Typical Frank Turek stupidity coming up in 3, 2, 1.
Well, I'll give you one such example, and that is the former Soviet Union.
And here's where Frank is going to completely misunderstand the difference between atheism and communism. Just you watch. Because if you bother to do any research at all, which we all know Frank doesn't know how to do, you'd know that the operation of communism has a whole lot more in common with religion and religious practices than it does with atheism. Besides, atheism is simply the lack of belief in gods. It can't actually cause anything. So, let's go watch Frank completely fuck it all up.
And the Soviet Union tried to, for 70 or so years, impose atheism on the populace.
That's simply not true. I told you he had no clue what the hell he was talking about. The core component of communism is that the state takes the center stage for the people. It becomes, for lack of a better word, the god that everyone must bow down to. Stalin didn't persecute the religious, and a lot of other groups, by the way, for no reason whatsoever. It was because their religious beliefs were getting in the way of their absolute adherence to communism. Stalin recognized his mistake within a few years when he brought back the Russian Orthodox Church because he recognized the usefulness of the mechanism of Christianity in keeping the people under control. The church was revived during World War II specifically because he recognized that it would intensify patriotic support for the war effort. This is 100% political, and it had nothing at all to do with atheism.
And when my friend Ravi Zacharias went over there a number of years ago and started talking about God and truth, he got a lot of pushback because they were trained to believe there is no God.
That's funny because Pew's 2017 survey, Religious Belief and National Belonging in Central and Eastern Europe, showed that Russia was 85% religious and 74% Christian. And that's even down from 2012 when it was 87% religious. Maybe, just maybe, the reason Ravi Zacharias had problems is because he was a complete asshole.
And many of them believed there was no God.
Only 15% at present, although that is up from 13% in 2012. They're headed in the right direction, although, yeah, I'm sure Frank doesn't think so.
And Stalin, as you know, and Lenin, and those kinds of leaders, both those leaders on different occasions It was probably more Lenin, now that I think about it. They bulldozed churches.
Yes, they did. But it had nothing at all to do with atheism, as I already said. You know who else bulldozes churches? Other theists. Christians do it regularly to Islamic mosques in parts of Africa, and African Muslims, they light Christian churches on fire. Are you going to try to blame that on atheism too? Yeah, wouldn't surprise me one bit.
They wanted to wipe out Christianity.
No, they wanted to wipe out anything that got in the way of adherence to communism. They persecuted a lot of groups that had strong beliefs that didn't want to just buy into communism lock, stock, and barrel. Now, the same was true of Hitler's Nazi Germany. You know who Hitler was persecuting? Atheists! So don't even think of claiming that Hitler was an atheist, you ignorant fuck. This is what happens when you don't have a damn clue about history. You just have an agenda and a really stupid, clueless audience.
And a lot of people will look at the errors, or the horrors, I should say, of religion, and there have been many horrors of religion. But a lot of times when the atheists bring those horrors up, they ignore the horrors of atheism.
You know, I'm still waiting for you to point out any actual demonstrable horrors of atheism. Please show us anything done specifically in the name of atheism. Just one case. Go ahead. Because this is what happens when you're desperate to find a way to shift the blame away from your own demonstrable horrors and onto someone else. Frank doesn't understand the difference between secular and atheistic. He's so dead set on the idea that he and his ilk are on one side and everybody else on the other side is the enemy that he's trying to blame things on to avoid having to deal with his own guilt. And he's trying to blame things on atheism that are not the fault of atheism any more than we can blame Joseph Stalin's facial hair for his actions simply because he had a mustache. The standard of proof is a whole lot higher than that, and Frank hasn't got a clue.
There were far more people killed in the last century by millions by atheistic regimes than have ever been killed in the name of religion anywhere.
There is no such thing as atheistic regimes. We return once again to the entirely unfounded belief that everyone is just like the religious, because their beliefs impinge on absolutely everything they do and everything they think. That must mean that atheists must be the same way, right? But we're not like that. Unless I'm speaking specifically about religion, I don't have an atheistic thought in my head. It is entirely irrelevant. In fact, again, according to Pew Research, 93% of atheists say that their atheism has little or no impact on their lives whatsoever. We are not like you. Just because Stalin was an atheist, and I've got no problem at all admitting that, that doesn't mean that anything he did was specifically driven by his atheism. Unlike, Hitler, who was very specific that his Christian beliefs were directly responsible for his mass murder of the Jews.
I mean, Stalin killed at least 20 million of his own people. Mao, probably 60 million of his own people.
But not by atheism. This is what I really don't understand, because it really isn't that difficult to grok. This is just a stampede toward a pre-existing, emotionally derived conclusion that has no rationality behind it whatsoever. It's the same kind of nonsense that idiots who claim that because the leaders of these regimes were men, that somehow maleness was responsible for it all. That's every bit as stupid, by the way, and if you buy into that garbage, you're as big of an idiot as Frank is. You can't just grab your imaginary boogeyman of choice and demand that it has to be responsible. You have to be able to back it up with objectively verifiable evidence. Give it a shot.
You put the dictators of the 20th century together and you get more than 100 million people dead by atheistic regimes. Now, this doesn't prove or disprove atheism or Christianity. I'm just saying the idea that evil comes from religion is nonsense.
But of course, whoever said that? I don't think I've ever seen anyone say that evil comes solely from religion. But we can point out examples of bad things that have come from religion, of bad things where religion is demonstrably responsible, of bad things where the responsible have said plainly that, yep, their religion caused them to perform these heinous acts, and the religious can do what in response? Pretend it didn't happen? Make excuses for why it really wasn't their religion to blame? Grab the goalposts and run around claiming, well, they weren't really Christians. But when it comes to bad things supposedly done by atheism, or in the name of atheism, what do they have to offer? Nothing. Just more empty claims that they've got no evidentiary support in favor of. Where is the very clear quote from Joseph Stalin saying that his atheistic beliefs are directly responsible for X? Because we've got that with Hitler. Hence today, I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator by defending myself against the Jew I am fighting for the work of the Lord, which he said in Mein Kampf. And while we're at it, because this comes up a lot, here's another quote from Hitler on atheism. He wasn't an atheist. Only a complete moron would think that he was. We are convinced that the people needs and requires this faith. We have therefore undertaken the fight against the atheistic movement, and that not merely with a few theoretical declarations, we have stamped it out. And he said that in a speech in Berlin on October 24th, 1933. Now, you do the same thing with Stalin. We'll wait.
According to the history of, I think it's the Encyclopedia of War, what percentage of wars do you think involve religion?
Directly or indirectly? Because I have a feeling you're going to go with the former. Now, granted, there are a lot of reasons to fight a war that have nothing at all to do with religion. But you'd be surprised how many wars fought for entirely non-religious reasons have actually used religion as a means to get the people to go out and die for the cause. It's a very high number. Of course, Frank won't bring that up because it gets in the way of the point that he's trying to make, but it still has to be a consideration. So let's pause here to look at what Frank has done so far. He's tried to blame atheists for a bunch of bloody 20th century wars that had nothing at all to do with atheism, while at the same time trying to excuse Christianity and other religions for wars that had ostensibly nothing to do with religion. Do we see the hypocrisy here?
According to them, 7%. If you take Islam out of it, it's 3%.
Yeah, because Islam sucks. And if you take out the other Abrahamic religions, you know what that number falls to? Less than 1%. And you know how many wars can be directly attributed to atheism? 0. Not a single one. Yes, there were leaders who were atheists, just like there were leaders who were Christians. But you don't want to count those, do you? You can't demonstrate a single war where atheism as an ideology was directly and objectively the cause of the war itself. You can't do that. So stop pretending.
In fact, let's just think about the last century. World War I caused by religion? No.
Yeah, we've already been here, so we're going to skip all that. I mean, honestly, how much proof do we have to provide that Frank Turek is a complete liar? Or an idiot? Or both? It isn't like anything I've presented takes any time at all to find online. It's freely available for anyone who cares to look. But for Frank and his ilk, either they don't want to look or they already know that what they're spewing is bullshit, and they're just doing it for the money. I think by now we all realize it's the latter, But that is absolutely sad, especially for the clueless theists in the audience who don't know any better and are counting on Frank Turek to set them straight. And wow, are they in trouble if that's the case? It's why I'm so adamant that people need to stop being consumed by their feelings and start caring about the facts. If you just wasted your time at a Frank Turek sideshow, go home, get online, and find out if the things that he said are right. Get out of your comfort zone, stay off the Bible sites, and go look at the actual facts. Because you're going to find that he's full of shit. Every damn one of them are. All of them. It's why we see the same lies going around and around and around in apologist circles. Either they're all dumb in exactly the same way, or they're all getting their lies from the same places. Which one do you think is more likely? Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Bum